I want to talk to you on Module 7 about due diligence and the exit strategy execution. In other words, that trifecta of power. That's the mindset I'd like you to adapt. Control, leverage, and liquidation. That's what I meant by the trifecta of power. Another way of wording that is what to do after those offers start coming back. I think that this is this is the shift that most people miss. I know I did as well. Up until now, everything you've done has been preparation, hasn't it? We chose the territory. We then sent the mail. You then gathered intel, and then we deployed the contracts. So now something changes because once those contracts start coming back, then you're no longer speculating. You're now operating because that's what you are. You are an operator. This is the moment where amateurs get overwhelmed. Maybe they get a little emotional, or maybe they get a little sloppy. But real operators, we slow down, we tighten up. Most importantly, we get paid. Module 7 is not about doing more work. It's about doing the right work on the few deals that are actually going to matter. What you done before is triage. What we're doing now is surgery. When those contracts start returning, this is what's going to happen. Predictability is going to happen every single time. What I mean by that is that some sellers will call wanting to negotiate. You will also know that some will quietly sign and then mail the contract back. But there are others that they will stall. I feel as if sometimes they might even test you. Or maybe they're just kind of fishing for reassurance, guys. And then there's that small percentage, the only ones we care about, that returns the contract attached to a real opportunity. And this is where amateurs panic. They try and save every deal. They over communicate. They think that every signed contract is sacred. But that's not how operators think, because not every signed contract deserves your capital or your time or even your attention. Your job is to do two things simultaneously. I want you to choose the correct exit strategy for each acceptable deal. And then the second thing I want you to do is we're going to perform due diligence on the contracts that are worth advancing. Those two decisions are going to then feed each other. And your due diligence is going to inform your exit. And your exit is then going to determine the deal. The only three exit paths that matter is what I'd like to talk to you on next, because inside the underground, there's really only going to be three exits. Everything else is just going to be noise. It's what I call guru clutter or internet fantasy. That first one is assignment of a contract. Second, double closing. And then the third is buying it outright. That is it. Not because we're limited, but because those three paths are going to give you control, leverage, and liquidity without exposing your spread. Assignments are not evil. They're just misused. Here's the rule that most people get wrong. Assignments are useful when the percentage margin is small, not when the profit dollar is small. Let me give you an example so it makes a little bit more sense. A contract at 100,000, buyer at 110,000. That's 10% margin. That assignment is fine. An example of that, of what's criminally foolish and stupid. A contract at 1,000, buyer at 11,000. That is not an assignment deal. That is a double close deal. And anyone who assigns that is exposing themselves unnecessarily. So inside the underground, we use assignments when margins are thin. Builders or developers are involved, maybe. Due diligence is going to shrink the sign. Let me reword that a little differently. Let me think through this. Due diligence, as I said, reveals when the deal doesn't justify deeper. So what I want you to think of assignments as a scalpel, not a hammer. Let me now move on to the second exit path that I refer to as double closing. This is the syndicate's weapon of choice. A double close means seller sells to you, you sell to your buyer. It also means that there's two separate transactions, two HUDs, two deeds, and zero visibility between the parties. So why is it that I feel that this does matter? Because spreads trigger emotion. And I've noticed that emotion then kills the deal. So when you do that double closing, it's been my experience that it protects your profit. It also protects your privacy, your leverage, your reputation, and most importantly, your psychology. This is how operators safely make 10,000, 20, 40, or 70K on land without drama, without renegotiation or interference. Let's move on to exit path 3, meaning buying it outright. This is what I call the power move. You buy outright when the deal is clean, high margins, low risk, and free from whatever I refer to as weird restrictions. A clear wealth multiplier, I want that to really sink in. This is your power move. The only time you buy outright. Make sure it's clean, high margins, low risk, free of any restrictions. Let me give you a good example of this. Property is worth $50,000. You can buy it for $8,000 to $10,000. Due diligence checks out. You don't hesitate, you buy. Why are you going to do that? Because owning is going to give you total control. It's also going to bring you maximum upside, zero dependency on their timing and seller flakiness. And I want you to remember this, capital will circulate. It won't stagnate. You don't tie up all the liquidity in inventory. You deploy cash selectively. You want to do it like a tactician, not a hoarder. Let me now move on to owner financing. That's what I like to refer to as that two-edged tool. Owner financing accelerates sales, but only when used with intention. The best use cases, low-end properties, 300 to 500 acquisition, or 500 to 1,500 down. Or maybe even something like I had one the other day that was 150, 175, something like that. Anything ranging from 150 to 300 monthly, because that's fast capital recovery and reoccurring cash flow. That's how you're going to build liquidity rivers. Here's what not to do owner financing. If you bought for $8,000 and the property is worth $60,000, that's a 20-year note. That's nonsense. We're not going to do that. Cash today beats hypothetical money later. Time, value is always going to win. If you were to think about that exit strategy, and you think about the exit strategy, or what is the exit strategy per property, I think that this is where most of the time when you're new, you may fail at this. And I think it's because when we're new, we pick one identity. And I noticed with me, you then assign everything. I remember like double closing everything. And then you think, oh man, I just want to buy everything, or I own or finance everything. And that's not a strategy. That's that expression dogma. What you want is every property. As the wallpaper in my office, it's a chessboard. Remember that every property is a new chessboard. And you want to ask yourself, what's the margin? What's the risk? What is the capital requirement? What is the time horizon? What's going to then protect my spread? I want your exit to be engineered. I don't want it to be ideological. And with all that being said, guys, nothing is locked. You can pivot at mid-deal. I'm going to teach you how to learn to adapt. I've noticed that when you're new at this, you freeze, but I'm going to teach you how to adapt. I also want to talk to you on integration because that is what's going to come next. By now, I want you to think about this. You've integrated exit strategy. You've integrated risk modeling. You've also integrated margin discipline, capital deployment, and even a due diligence sequencing. So in that next model, let's go deeper on the due diligence. I'm going to go into soil access restrictions. I'm also going to go into encumbrances, utilities, zoning, HOAs, and then that market velocity, because this is where deals are either confirmed or they're killed. And killing bad deals early is how real operators stay rich.